Welcome, everybody, to the Raad Life, the only talk radio show that takes you along with host and age explorer Rod Gantos on his continuing journey of discovery into life's challenges, opportunities, options, and all the latest and greatest things that come with getting older. The Raad Life is brought to you this week by Your Home for a Lifetime, a company dedicated to empowering you to stay safely, independently, and comfortably in your own home. And now here is your host, Rad Gantos.
Taking pictures of himself.
Can you hear me?
Camera.
Can you hear me now?
Oh my goodness!
I'm not taking pictures of myself. I'm taking my pictures of myself and my guest here, which was blurry because you had to rush me.
Rush you.
I can't work under these conditions, Paul. I'm just. You know what? Are we at a point where we have enough of an audience that I can just get up and leave?
Sure.
We got the show.
You got the show. Oh,
see?
Wow.
She's ready.
Talk about
we don't need
becoming
you.
Obsolete right away. Jeez.
We'll just cross out the Rad
Okay.
and we'll just make it the Life here. Yeah.
The life.
Yeah.
The life as you know it. It's really funny because speaking of life, right? Mary, we were just talking, and she's like, "Oh, so how much time do we going to be on the air, and so how much time do we need for editing?" And I said, "Editing, editing. We don't use that word around here.
There's
That's
no
a 4-letter word
stinking
around
editing.
here."
Yikes.
Yeah, it's deep end of the pool alive right now. So, without further ado, I would like to introduce my guest. You know what? I'm actually going to let you introduce yourself.
Okay. My name is Mary Gray Perdue.
Yeah.
I was raised here in Costa Mesa, so I'm back in my home
So you
stomping
tell
grounds
me,
here.
yeah.
Modern day grad.
Yes, thank you, Paul. And as I went to Orange Coast College, I worked across the street at what used to be a Save-On South Coast. So
Yeah.
it's a great little city here. And I'm delighted to be able to be here and talk about some hard-hitting issues that we're all dealing with. But before all that, I was a banker in the 80s and right down the street as well for a while.
You went from being a coldless, heartless banker to now a helper of homeless. here?
Ignore him.
I was
ignore him.
I was a compassionate, wonderful banker.
Oh, okay.
So,
And then
You
went
were the
into-
one that
well,
they were
before,
looking for.
before we get there, because I really appreciate the fact that you're going to give background. I usually have to coax that out of guests, but just to give people an idea of who you are currently and where they can find more information as we're talking. So what are you currently involved in?
Family Assistance Ministries, or FAM. We're a faith-based nonprofit located in San Clemente, and we serve all of South
And
Orange
you're the
County.
executive director, right?
I am.
How long have you been executive director? at
7.5 years.
Yeah, wow. Okay, so now that being said, what's the website people can follow for FAM?
Family-assistance.org.
Okay, now tell me your background.
Okay. I was a banker for all of the 80s.
Yeah.
Then I was a mom at home and an entrepreneur for a while. And then became a single mom of a 1-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 7-year-old, which
Yeah.
was not the big plan, never is the big plan,
Right.
right? But had a wonderful group of friends that surrounded us. And as time went on, I found a nonprofit called Homeward with Jim Burns, and I worked there for almost 13 years. Did some national traveling and heading up parenting and marriage seminars. In fact, the largest speaking team in the U.S. for that or for parenting seminars.
Okay.
Learned a lot about nonprofit, and I was able to combine both that and the banking background as well as my entrepreneurial background
Invaluable.
into the nonprofit
Yeah, it's a
world
great combination.
and when I arrived at FAM, it was, wait, what language are you speaking? What is a NOFA? What are these things?
A hoofa?
And I found that it was really a combination of everything in my background came to work there.
How
I had
funny.
a brother who was a Vietnam veteran who at age 49 decided life was too difficult and became one of the statistics.
Oh my God.
I've had that-
Unfortunately, yeah, happens too often.
Right? And I had that kind
Yeah.
of call. Somebody called up to a brand new volunteer, and she came running into my office. It was her first day. And she said, there is a veteran on the phone who has taken some pills and he wants to commit suicide. I said, I will take that call. All I could think of was my brother. And was honored to be able to be on the phone with him. And as I was talking with him and I was writing things down, I was finding out, where is he? Swami's parking lot, writing that down and handing it to someone who was calling 911
Right.
to get the police on their way who really needed to handle it.
Right.
I realized that what my brother lacked, one of the things was hope. So I started to ask him about hopeful things. Do you have any kids? Yes, I do. And we went through and started talking about all that. What are you doing? Cleaning out my truck. What color is it? So the police were able to arrive and take over the situation, which was the right thing. But so lots of things in my background, as with everybody there, help us to help people compassionately, yet with some rules.
Can I just emphasize one thing there that you said? I want to slide. Hope. I have felt at times in my life, I went through a period of depression, and hope was the one thing. When you lose hope, boy, when you just don't think tomorrow's going to be a better day,
Right.
and I think you're going to talk about homelessness here, and I think a lot of that is the same thing. How do you have hope if you don't have a home, or if you have mental illness or on drugs or whatever? That lack of hope is
Yeah.
everything.
Well, and
Absolutely.
we are conditioned to associate hope with certain things that maybe there are other ways to associate hope when you're in that spot. You know, it's fascinating, Mary. I mean, we talk about the show being like a life's journey, like a journey of aging, and that's something I can't take credit for, because Paul basically dubbed and called me the age explorer.
You
which
are.
I
You're
don't know what the heck he's talking about, right? Still don't know after 3 years, right?
It's good.
But I'll take it. So what's interesting about what you just shared is it reminds me once again how a friend of mine used to say, wherever you are, that's where you are when you get there, kind of thing. It's like it's all about the timing, and life unfolds in a very interesting way. I mean, you just described a combination of experiences, a life journey that took you to a space where all these things came together to allow you to do what you're doing today.
Correct.
Down to being so personal that you would actually get a call that would be directly, like 1 degree of separation with what happened with your brother.
Right.
And so it's amazing, because I think as human beings, sometimes we need to just stop and remind ourselves to be cognizant and open to seeing life in that kind of awareness. Sometimes we're so busy we don't get that. We just keep going and going and going, and we don't realize what it is that we're being gifted with.
Well, because we see it as a destination, so we're trying to set out, I'm going to go there, I'm going to be this person. When I arrive, I know exactly what it's going to look like. And she said all these detours along the way until she finally found a space and a place where it all made sense.
So I'm curious, what made you transition? Really, I mean, and I have my own reasons for being involved.
Are
in
you doubting her?
nonprofits. No. But to
Tell us the truth.
go from a career path down in a corporate environment, for example. I'm making an assumption that's corporate environment. It's business minded. It's sort of monetary reward. To then find yourself where you're basically gravitating towards something that is rewarding you in a different way.
Yeah. So it happened naturally. I retired to be a mom of my now then 7-month-old. It was never going to be my life plan to be a mom at home. I was a businesswoman.
Sure.
I was assistant vice president in a bank, of a national bank, when
Yeah.
I was 26.
Worked hard to get there.
Right, and that was where I wanted to go. All my friends were bankers. We all, we were all dinks, dual income, no kids. We traveled. We did all sorts of fun things. When I retired to be a mom at home, I found a whole new calling. Loved being that mom at home. Delighted in doing all the things that I did, creating Red Day or Hawaii Day, and we played with all red toys, so on theme days.
You had a day where you played with all red toys? I never thought
when I
of
was
that.
teaching my son his colors.
What a brilliant idea. 'Cause
Nobody taught you that, Paul?
Nobody taught me that. I still
You-
mix up colors.
You and my mother think that's brilliant.
I do. I think that's brilliant.
Anyway, and I made him his own sandwich menu, and
Yeah.
he got to pick a shape, and that's how we learned shapes. And I cut his sandwich in those shapes. So I
You
had
got
a
to
lot of
pick your
fun.
sandwich in a shape. I didn't get a shape. I got a just stinking piece of bread, and that
Make
was
your
it,
own.
buddy.
Here's the love.
Here's the peanut butter, and here's the jelly. Go ahead.
We can help fill those gaps. for you.
Wow. We're bringing up my childhood trauma here. I wanted to have a days like that.
It's not your therapy session.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
We can
He-
talk- we
he
can
he
talk
thinks
about that.
every show is. So
It
it's
is.
not.
It's about my life.
So-
journey.
so then what- yeah.
I'll explain.
Yeah.
So when I was a mom at home, and I became an entrepreneur, thinking of different types of jobs to do and creative things. And I became the PTA secretary for a local brand new school. I didn't have any kids there yet, but I thought my kids were going to go to public school, and I'd never been involved in public school, so I should get involved. And so I was the PTA secretary at that school. And then as life went on, I realized when I became a single mom, I then had a 1-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 7-year-old, as I said earlier, and I needed to make some changes because I needed to increase my income. So I started a bookkeeping business out of my home, and on it went. So everything that I did were choices made, assessing the circumstances that I was in, and deciding what is it I wanted my future to be. And you adapt as you go. And actually, we use that at FAM all the time. When somebody walks in our door, they're usually so stressed out from life that they're dealing about 12 points lower than their own IQ from stress.
I asked the question for a reason.
Purposefully, yes.
Purposefully, yes.
Yes,
Because I think it shows that you adapted and you adjusted, but your adaptation and adjusting happened from a perspective of prevention and planning.
Right.
and not as a reaction to a situation. I'm sure there was some of that, but I think you had skills from your corporate and business life that you brought into this, into your personal life.
Sure. And my childhood.
And your
my
childhood,
upbringing.
yeah.
Well, let me tell you. So, where I was going with the clients is when they come in and they're so stressed out, they're usually, it's embarrassing to tell your story to a complete stranger. So we think they're brave. So last year, 12,000.
They're very brave, yeah.
12,924 people came to us last year. 95% of those were people trying not to become homeless. So we get to sit with them, our wonderful case managers, sit with them and listen to their story. They cry. It's embarrassing to tell your story to a complete stranger, and you don't know what they're going to say.
You're
at
the lowest point of your life.
That's right.
Yeah.
Then we start them on a budget, which engages the logical side of the brain. Now it's numbers. You got your income, you have your expenses, and you have your bottom line, and now the real work begins. And we always say, when they're always saying something embarrassing, I never thought I would be here, and we get to say, this isn't your life story. This is this moment in your life, and there's going to be
this is
next
just this
week.
page in the book.
Right, next week and next month and next year. And we get to help them walk through that time. And hopefully, the goal is, don't create dependency, but help them. They will make the decisions because they have to do all the hard work.
But Mary, do you think? I mean, I would think. I'm making assumptions here, but some people don't even know that that's what they're doing, is creating dependency. Nobody ever really told them that this is a different path that you could take. You could take that overwhelm and replace it with a sense of empowerment by actually doing the work in an organized manner, because the potential of actually a successful outcome is heightened by doing these steps. I don't know. I mean,
you've laid that out very logically and succinctly. For someone who is in the middle of stress and depression, they can't think that way. Or they've tried and failed and failed. So what did Zig Ziglar say? You put fleas in a jar and you put the lid on the jar, and they're jumping and they're hitting the top and they're saying, ow, this hurts. This is really dumb. I'm only going to jump this high. And you take the lid off and they never jump out because they learn it hurts too much, and it doesn't matter how hard you try.
So how do you get people that are in that situation, from your experience, how do you get people to break through that? Because I'm not underestimating it at all. I think it's a very overwhelming situation to find yourself in.
Sure. Well, our amazing case managers are gifted. They are trained. They have helped people. We've been around for 19 years. Some of them have been around longer, some shorter period of time, but we have a whole tool chest of ideas that can help people who are trying not to become homeless and those who already are, how to get back on their feet.
Is it a one-size-fits-all?
Nope. Not at all. Everybody's unique. You'll have someone who come in and say, I need help with rental assistance. And as we get through their budget, looking at the numbers make sense, we can help you with this. And then here's a course for getting back on track over the next couple of months. We had a senior who showed up holding her 3-day eviction notice, sobbing. Sat with a case manager who started unpacking her finances with her and said, you own your own mobile home outright. You make enough money to pay all your bills, and you haven't paid your homeowners in 7 months. What's going on? The senior was crying, and through her tears she said, 7 months ago my 40-year-old son was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. So at that moment, her money, her mind, and her emotions went into trying to save his life, of course. So we called the Homeowners Association and said, this is what's going on in her life. What if we have her come in the first of every month? She'll make a payment, we'll match it. It's a nominal amount. And in 4 months she'll be caught up, but better than that, we'll reteach her to pay her bills. She'll be back on track. They said, great. Had they said no, which they could have, they had every right to say no, we're taking her place, we would have cured that. We would have called partners if it was more than what we could have spent that month on one person, but we still would have had her come in the first of every month. The very next person who came in was a gentleman in his 40s who said, you guys need to help me with my rent. My unemployment is up in 2 months. The case manager says, wow. People don't usually come in 2 months early because they're trying to cure it on their own. They've been able to in the past, and they're trying every way to not have to come in and tell their story again to a stranger. So as she unpacked his finances with him, she said, you get $1,600 in unemployment and you pay $1,300 in rent now. You can't afford to live there now. But good news, you have time to make some changes. One might be getting some roommates. Another might be moving to a less expensive place. He stood up in anger, cussed her out, and walked out the door. We know that later, when it's a less emotional moment, he can look at the numbers because numbers don't lie. We also know that anger is a cover for fear. So none of that was about us. All of that was about his embarrassment and disappointment. He had expectation that we didn't meet. That's okay. Oftentimes somebody who reacts that way comes back and apologizes. I'm sorry. I'm really embarrassed. We say, that's okay. Let's just get to work.
You're throwing all these great takeaways. Anger is a cover for fear. That's one. How do you get people then to see that, or to see hope in what seems to them a hopeless situation? How do you can sit here logically and say, well, the numbers don't lie. Today's just one day. All these things that seem logical when you're not in the moment.
Or seem quippy to somebody who is in the midst of stress, right?
Yes. Right.
It's a matter of us walking through it with them. They've got to do the work. We're walking alongside. We have a pantry full of fresh fruits and vegetables that they can use and take the money they would have, so they start seeing progress. And we'll ask them to come back. Come back and see us next week. Let's take a look next week and see where we are. Sometimes there's so much to do that we help them chop it up into bite sizes.
How you eat an elephant, one bite at a time.
And progress. I think that is that you have to find a way to take a step and to start a journey towards recovery, towards a plan. It isn't.
Well,
one
I think
thing.
the timeline is probably different in every single situation too. For that person to get to that point of awareness with the help and counseling, and then basically then to have that manifest and take hold, and then for them to basically be more empowered to take it on themselves. I mean, I think you can't set a time frame on this.
Right.
Yeah, it's going to be
Some people
different.
just need a budget.
Yeah.
That's it. They don't take anything. No food, nothing else. They just need someone to walk through the process with them because they've never had to do it before.
Right.
So how do they find you?
Gosh, if you call 211, which is Orange County Social Services Hotline, it actually is the hotline all around the country.
Right.
They will refer you to us. I speak at churches, businesses, schools. All sorts of people come and volunteer. We have 275 volunteers now each week, over 1,500 annually. Disney's people have come. They're employees, the good guys from Pacific Life. Lots of different organizations come and volunteer and spread the word. So whenever someone says, hey, do you want to come to a radio show? You bet I do. Absolutely. What a golden way for us to get the word out there. We don't spend a whole ton of money on marketing because we're feeding people and helping people not become homeless.
But I think your mission is very universal. It's been a need that's always going to be there. And in fact, in the area where we live in Orange County, it has become more and more of a humanitarian crisis. And you can't really generalize reasons, underlying reasons, and all this stuff. But you can either basically be focused on the fact that we have a problem, or try to do something to basically try to alleviate it in whatever percentages it is. I mean, anything is better than not doing anything about this. And you guys have been doing this since what,
1999?
Yeah, and you've been there for, like you said, 7.5 years. So the question, Mary, is: have you seen in the time that you have been there, involved in this, has this thing increased in terms of need? Has it changed in the manifestation of what that need is? Because I would think that even our realities in Orange County has changed. Our way of living, the composition of our demographics, all of that has changed. So you're seeing people at their lowest, needing help and stepping out of their comfort zone absolutely to come and seek that assistance. Okay? What has your, reflecting back on the last 7 years, how are we different today from where we were?
All right, I have several things I'm going to say about this. First, this last summer I was in Washington, D.C. for the National Conference on Ending Homelessness. There were 2,000 of us there from 48 states. There were 20 of us from Orange County. Every single city, every place across this nation, every state is dealing with an increase in homelessness. It is a shame. There is something wrong when you have somebody who is mentally ill walking on the streets and there's no place for them to go. The longer somebody is on the streets, the further down they spiral, emotionally, mentally, physically, in every way. And it becomes way more expensive to all of us as citizens to have somebody sitting on the streets. So people have been working hard, lots of great organizations that we partner with across this county. So let's drill it down to where we are, right? Yeah. So let's talk about Orange County. Let me go higher first.
Sure.
State of California, since between 2015 to 2017, had a 15% increase in homelessness. Orange County had 8%. I don't have the current numbers from 17 to 18,
What's
but we
your
know,
feeling?
Of course, it's increased. Of course, it has. We're dealing with an influx of people. Some are from out of state. Some are here because, gosh, we have a beautiful sand and beaches where people
Weather,
try to
you
sleep.
Don't have any increment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So back east, they have a lot more data and a lot more information because they have shelters. They know their exact numbers. Here we don't. We do our point-in-time count. FAM is a deployment center, one of them in South County, every 2 years. But people seem to disappear during that count, which is not helpful because it makes the numbers seem lower.
Yeah, you have no count.
Right. So we battle that, but we know how many people we have on our roster. We know how many people are on all of our partner rosters, all the other organizations that we work with. We have we've had an increase in family homelessness, but we're working hard on that. We're part of a collaborative called the Family Solutions Collaborative, which we helped found in the county with our partner organizations, and our goal is to end family homelessness by 2020. There's between 200 and 300, depending on who you talk to, homeless families in Orange County right now.
Right.
They're living in their cars.
Not
They're moving from
individuals.
night to night. These are families, right? As far as individuals go, we've seen an increase, of course, and that's no news to anybody. The vim, the vehemence out there, and the anger, and again, anger is a cover for fear, that people are dealing with is because there is no place for people to go. We've helped 32 people through our Homeward Bound program find either their family or a support system, whether it be a homeless veteran who we found a place in another state where they could go and get emergency housing as well as emergency services that they needed. We don't have that way down here, right? To the
No,
guy,
unfortunately we don't. It's
Right.
sad that we don't.
right, to the guy who was living in an encampment, which we are not fans of. They're not safe or sanitary.
No, for anybody.
No. And so we had a gentleman show up. He'd never heard of us before until that day. It was the 4th time his belongings had been stolen. He came in. He was exhausted. He was in his 50s. He had had a wife, kids, home, and job. Little by little, that all peeled away. He lost his job. Pretty soon, he went through his savings. He went through his retirement. They lost their home, and then wife leaves with the kids. So he lived depressed, not knowing, kept trying things, kept failing, and finally gave up. The 4th time his things were stolen, somebody told him about FAM. He came walking in. We knew he was there. You could see the life weariness on him. And he sat with the case manager, started unpacking his life and trying to figure out what is a good path for him. He figured it out. He said, my dad was a truck driver. So we looked up truck driving schools, found one in Colton. Our case manager called them. They said, absolutely, we have an opening. Got him cleaned up. He got a shower locally at a local church in San Clemente who does that occasionally. And then we gave him food, a suitcase, helped him fill out his online application, clean clothes from our free boutique, and off he went. 1 year later, he showed up. A big rig came driving down our street. He jumped out, ran in, threw down a check, and said, help somebody else. He has a 2-bedroom apartment in Dana Point. He's reunited with his kids, and he loves traveling. He gets to see the nation by being a truck driver.
Isn't it amazing how we forget that it's about the hand up and not the hand out necessarily, and yet that's what's really lacking? I mean, you were there for this man and basically had him work through his own stuff, but he had the support there while he was doing it.
Right.
And then helped him cross over and get into that school and so forth. Yeah, it is really a fascinating story that we hear all the time. This is not a new story. Successes of this nature are not a new story. And that gentleman, if not by the grace of God, could be any one of us sitting in this room.
Absolutely. That wasn't his big life plan as well.
No.
We had 355 people last year who got rental assistance to avoid becoming homeless.
Right.
So that with a plan, we had 12,924 who received food along with a plan. The idea is there are other ways to help that can help them, but they've got to have that whole plan. It's got to involve finances.
So how do you measure and quantify your success as an organization?
That's a good question.
Because I'm assuming you have to, in terms of being able to track your record, right?
Sure. That, and we respond. Yeah. We have a well-rounded pie of income, and we report to all of our donors, whether it be foundations and grants to individuals, churches, businesses, civic organizations, and then we also do our fundraising. So we track every day, every single encounter. So of the 12,924 last year, it was over 66,000 encounters. Every single one of those are tracked. We want to be good stewards of what's donated to us.
Yeah.
We want to be good stewards to the people who are walking in and counting on us to try to help them figure out a plan. Again, they have to do the work, but we can help them with a whole tool chest of ideas. So we report to everybody that donates to us. We report out our annual numbers. We report to grantors. Some require quarterly reports, some require annual reports, but we're really good about tracking all that.
Well, and your reputation precedes you basically for everything, including that. Is not only are you fulfilling your missions of providing that service, but you're also honoring those supporters that basically, whether they're organizations or volunteers that are basically involved with you. And I think that really speaks to the integrity of the organization and everybody who's involved in it. And I'm proud to have to our privilege, I should say, live in a city where we actually have organizations such as FAM that are basically genuinely, authentically involved in providing solutions.
Thank you.
We are a very engaged community, as anybody who knows San Clemente is, right?
Sure.
And we're very vocal, but it is really fascinating that we have such a concentration of people that are good-hearted and actually will step out of their comfort zones to help others. What? Two questions. One, what do you see today as being the crisis that we are facing, and how can we actually make an impact, a positive impact on what we're dealing with, so that we preventively can move past this rather than just be having it snowballing constantly on us? And let's keep it local. I mean,
that's loaded, and I will keep it local. We're facing a bit of a crisis right now with the numbers that we're trying to help. And again, everybody has their own story.
Mm-hmm.
So each one we work with, we're trying to help them get to that next step. Some, it's not new that somebody who is dealing with a drug issue, they've got to hit their rock bottom before they're willing to make those
Absolutely.
changes. Some will never, unfortunately, and some will.
Yeah.
We want to be there when they're ready to make that change. We want to be able to make a contact with them and let them know that when you're ready,
We're here.
we're here. We can help you get into rehab. We can help you get into detox, whatever that is. There are quite a few organizations that can do that, and we all partner together. For those who are they're depressed, they've got to get some help. They've got to know that trying one more time isn't going to necessarily result in failure, but if it does, there are baby steps we can help them take. Is everybody ready? No, we know that as well.
Sure.
What we also want is to help people find their support system. So 32 people have been able to travel back to where they came from or to a new place where they have a support structure. That is one at a time. That takes hours of work per person. Got to get them to trust you, to open up and give you the real scoop. What we don't want is to do what others are accused of, and that is to just send people with a one-way ticket somewhere. We want to make sure there's someone on the other end who can capture them. It's not fair. I had a guy and a girl show up at FAM. We were closed for distribution for the day, and I was walking out, and I said, "Hey, what you doing?" And the guy started going, "Hey, it's a beautiful day, wonderful city." I go, "No, let's not do that. Let's talk real. What are you doing here? Where are you from?" He says, "Well, I was in Apple Valley yesterday, and they gave me a bus ticket to leave." Well, we're the end of the line there in San Clemente, right? And so I said, "Well, where are you from?" And he said, "Washington." And I said, "Okay, can we help you get back to Washington?" And he looked down immediately, and he said, "I'm in trouble there." I said, "Can we help you get back there and face your trouble?" And he's still looking down. He's either feeling shame, fear, guilt, whatever it is. But I want to come alongside him and encourage him. And I just said, "How old are you?" And he said, 28. And I said, "Well, do you know how many lifetimes I've lived since I was 28? Let us help you get back and face your trouble. This is
not the end of your life."
Yes, and then move on with your life.
Yeah.
He's still looking down, scared, and I just said, "I want you to think about where you slept last night. Is that what you want your future to be?" And he looked up immediately and said, "I'll go." I said, "Wonderful." Immediately separated him from the cute homeless girl, sent him on to a case manager who was then able to help him with a plan, with a destination, and with a plan when he got there, which was home. And for her, I turned to her and she said, "I'm fine." I go, it's not fine. It's not safe. It's not sanitary. She goes, "I'm fine." I go, "Okay, when you're ready, you come back and tell us." And a week later, she came back and she said, "Okay, I'm ready. Someone tried to attack me with scissors last night." So we were able to call her mom, arrange for her to go live with her brother in another state where she came from. Out of all the 32, that's the one who came back because she's dealing with schizophrenia and the family couldn't deal with it. We have several local men and women, young men and women, who come from local families who are dealing with the mental illness. It is a challenge. The family can't have them in their home because there's fear. And yet, as they're on the street and spiraling downward, I'm encouraged that the county has just opened up the first mental health place in quite a long time. It's taking 60 of the most chronically mentally ill homeless off the streets, but we need more. We definitely need more.
And where is that at?
At Santa Ana.
Okay.
And what do you attribute the lack of those kind of facilities? Because again, this is not a new problem. We've kind of known that there's underlying issues to homelessness, and one of them is definitely the need for support services.
Right.
So, what is the hesitation? What is the resistance to basically provide that? Is it a sense that those will be available through nonprofits like FAM, and churches, and we don't really need to look at it as a community where we get engaged into the provision of solutions? What is the resistance?
Excellent question. I don't know. It's bigger than me.
Yeah.
The resistance is there's fear. Some people are advocating for an emergency shelter. Some people are advocating for the mental health institutions. I really think a huge help would be to have some more mental health institutions where people who need that constant care can get it. The county just a couple years ago started opening up more permanent supportive housing beds, which was HUD funded, so Housing Urban Development funded. We received a part of that funding, and we're able to take 10 chronic homeless off the streets of San Clemente and Dana Point and get them into permanent supportive housing, which means we are the leaseholder, we're the master leaseholder, we pay the rent, we pay for all the bills, and we have somebody that goes up once a week to make sure these people that are dealing with mental illness are staying on their meds or getting to the doctors, assimilating into
you're
the
vested
community.
in their success.
Right. The very first guy was on the streets for 40 years, a veteran in his 70s.
Wow.
When he walked into that place, he said, I have a door. It's like, yes, you have a door. He said, I have a bathroom.
Yeah.
You have a bathroom on your door.
I have hot water.
Yes, and you know what? Model citizens up there. There is 100% reduction in law enforcement calls. Huge reduction in emergency room visits, etc. So some people will say, well, gosh, I'd like that kind of deal. It's like, no, you wouldn't. These people are dealing with a mental illness. These are chronic homeless who have spiraled down and just need a little bit of a hand up. And it costs us as citizens half of what it costs to have them on the streets. There's the
Right, in terms
$1 million
of
Murray out there.
enforcement and all the other stuff that goes along with it.
All the services.
But there's
Safety.
at least three reasons. We've had lots of shows on homelessness, and I think there's at least 3 or 4 that come up all the time. You say, why have we done it? One is where, not my backyard.
Yeah,
Put them somewhere, but not me.
Right.
2, do we do little ones or big ones? There's a big debate roaring right now. Do we build one massive facility out in the canyons? Or do we, like a Perdue Canyon where nobody lives, or do we build lots of little ones that are closer to where the problem is, and that means more spaces and more permits and more people upset, big or little. And let's go back to when this started. I think it was like the 80s or 70s or whatever. They shut down all the mental health facilities because, 1, it seemed cruel. You're just warehousing people and not getting any better. And 2, it cost a heck of a lot of money. So they opened them up and threw them out into the streets.
Yes. I was going to say all
hasn't
that,
cost
but
us,
you said it much better.
It hasn't cost us any less.
No, it's cost us more.
It's cost us more.
It's cost us way more.
But
in
we don't
many
see
different ways.
that. It's evaporated into the landscape. We don't feel that. When you see a building and you get a budget every year that's got to go up 10%, you say, like a prison, you got to shut that down.
Sure, and the cost has been spread across. There was a study done by UCI and United Way and Jamboree Housing. In that study, it talks about the cost and all the different entities that absorb those costs.
Yep.
And nowhere in there does it talk about the cost to the person. But they don't leave it out on purpose because they're answering the question that was asked of them. But nowhere in there is talking about that person's quality of life or the people in the community who are now absorbing the people that are walking around lost and no place to use the restroom, etc.
And when we see that, and not necessarily in the issue of homelessness only, but when you basically not obliterate, but you purposely or the
word is obfuscate.
No. I'm not going to even say that it's purposeful, right? It could be a byproduct, a happenstance, right? But when you leave out that component and measure for that component, you're basically marginalizing that part of the equation, and it makes it much easier when you marginalize that person to now put them in a box where they're basically an issue, a problem. You dehumanize them in a way, and that makes it easier for you to basically just be very black and white about a situation. This is not a black and white situation. This is not a new situation. This is not one that basically is going to be based on a 4-year, election cycle where you're sitting in a seat. This is a long-term commitment that communities have to take on in order to basically be your brother's keepers. In the case of the ones that are basically want that help, and they don't have it. And we're not saying that everybody out there is basically ready or wanting that help, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But we only got a couple minutes left. We got to get to the key question: How do you get money, and how can people help you?
Love those questions. We take donations online through family-assistance.org on the Donate Now button, or people can mail us donations to 1030 Calle Negocio in San Clemente, 92673. And what was your other question?
how do you presently raise money? Is it all just mom and pop individuals? You said faith-based. Is some church or churches stand behind you? Or
yeah, we keep a well-rounded pie of income as being an ex-banker. You don't want to be dependent on any one industry. And so a third of our income comes from foundations and grantors. A third of our income comes from fundraising. We just had our second annual gala. We have a hunger walk in October, third Sunday of October. It's the 31st annual hunger walk. And a golf tournament coming up this August. So fundraisers like that. Other people in the community do fundraisers we don't even know about.
So you said faith-based, so I was assuming that there was some church or denomination standing behind you and supporting this.
We actually have 35 churches that support us financially. We are not any denomination. We are a standalone organization that was built as a faith-based organization where the churches got together and said, gosh, we have people going from place to place to place. Let's have one hub where people aren't then working the system, but also everything that was collected in South County kept being sent up to Central and North, and they kept saying, we need more help down here. And so that's how FAM began, and the very first person we helped was someone facing eviction who needed rental assistance along with a financial plan, and by month 2 they were standing on their own 2 feet.
So that's actually perfect, because the last question I want to ask you, and I want you to come back and talk about this because it's a much bigger conversation, is how much of this problem is because of affordable housing?
Well, it costs, let's see, a worker needs to earn $27.62 an hour to afford to rent a typical one-bedroom apartment in Orange County.
Wow. Say that again, Mary, please.
A worker needs to earn $27.62 an hour to afford a typical one-bedroom in Orange County, or 105 hours a week at minimum wage.
105 hours a week.
At minimum wage to afford the typical one-bedroom.
One bedroom.
And
when you're saying typical, you're talking like, on the lower rent side of probably Orange County,
It would be average.
Yeah, average.
You take the
Just
higher
average.
and the lower and average it out.
Yeah. That's the other factor that we face all these dilemmas. It's a bedroom community. We're all single family. There's no high density. I don't necessarily like high density projects. I like to look at projects from in terms of what is appropriate for those communities, right? But yeah, that is a thing that cannot be taken out of this discussion.
Right. I did want to back up to the income.
Yeah.
The other third of that pie of income is individuals, businesses, civic organizations, and churches. So we have a really nice group of supporters that come alongside us and help us with the funds we need in order to answer that most critical need that walks in our door every day.
And how many? And this is the sort of the other population that's in danger in my mind, is that you have people that are born and raised in communities, that in Orange County, that are basically the future of those communities. They're the contributors of those communities, the income contributors, the leadership contributors, all this stuff. And because we basically are just sleeping on this issue of affordable housing, we are losing these people.
We're losing 2 of my 3 children moved out of state. They can't afford to live here. Many of my friends' kids have moved out of the area. Seniors are also hurting hugely.
Absolutely.
We have 15% of our clients are seniors. That's the fastest growing demographic we have.
Wow.
46%, by the way, are children. So, yeah, absolutely, affordable housing is a huge issue.
So I will ask you to come back, and I would like to focus on that particular issue.
Awesome.
But I really appreciate you being here, sharing about FAM and your background.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Appreciate it very much.
Doors open.
Okay,
We
great.
have a door, and it's open. So.
come back September for your
any
walk
time.
thing.
Actually,
There you
yeah,
go. Okay.
let's do that.
That would be
Let's
awesome.
schedule it for that.
Okay.
Thanks, Mary.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Take care.
You have been listening to the Raad Life radio show with your host and age explorer, Raad Gantos, brought to you on the one and only octalkradio.net. Join us again next week as we continue our journey of discovery into life's challenges, opportunities, options, and all the latest and greatest things that come with getting older.